Tourism is currently one of the most dynamic and competitive industries in the world. It requires every country to have the ability to adapt constantly to tourists' changing needs and desires, as the tourist satisfaction, safety, and enjoyment are mainly the focus of tourism businesses. Today, September 27th, is being internationally celebrated as World Tourism Day. Diannille Taylor-Williams, the Assistant Secretary in the Ministry of Tourism, is here to speak to us on this international observance. Welcome to GMSKN.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Well, it's a pleasure indeed to have you. Let's start the conversation this way. Tourism Day, World Tourism Day, is that something that's observed here in St. Kitts and Nevis, and if so, how?
Yes, it's not a big celebration, but we do mark World Tourism Day annually, where the Minister of Tourism would always give a speech focused on the theme that has been chosen for World Tourism Day. And that has been done for us.
So why isn't it marketed, let's say, to make us Kittitians and division aware of it so that we can pour more into tourism?
I'll say it like this. Many years ago, one of the things we would have done when Tourism Month was celebrated in October each year, we would launch it on September 27th, celebrate in October, and end in November, because actually November 2nd, I think, is Caribbean Tourism Day. So those are things we are mindful of, because we end up being between. Now we celebrate Tourism Month in November to be in sync with the celebrations in the Caribbean region. So you want to save some of the activities for Tourism Month, but we still want to acknowledge what is being celebrated globally, because we are a part of it.
All right, so as a tourism professional, I want to ask you what your thoughts are on the theme this year, Rethinking Tourism.
For me, it is very timely and it is unavoidable, because for us, 2020 was the great reset. Yes. We're hearing a lot of re's. We begin giving another chance to do again.
Yes.
Many of us, just before the 2020 pandemic, would have heard the new term, over-tourism, where people were becoming angry in Barcelona, for example, about the amount of tourists on the streets, on the beaches. The locals could hardly get around. And so those are things that will come into mind. And when we think that is far-fetched for St. Kitts, in terms of over-tourism and the impact of the number of tourists coming to the destination, I recall a telephone call which I had received from a local one day. He was so upset because everybody was stopping at the Bottle Tree in Old Road. All the taxis were stopping, but as you know, that would create a bottleneck. So he's angry at the tourists. And I think when we have something like this, it helps us to rethink tourism, in the sense that we get another chance to look at the way we do things. For example, do all tours have to go westward? Can some go eastward and return on the western route? Can we start looking north in terms of the St. Peter's area and what they have to offer? It also gives us an opportunity to innovate. New ideas, doing the same thing. How about people, for example, using technology more to experience the destination? I know that as a result of COVID and being locked up, people want to be out more. They want to experience local things. They want to sit with locals, do like the locals. And so we have that opportunity as well. So we don't have to always be on the main road. We can do things off the beaten track. We can do more hiking, because then you're out in nature. And this gives us the opportunity to rethink the way we've been doing it. Is it necessarily the best way? And if it's not, what can we do different? Also, it gives us a chance to think about the size and the numbers. Some persons, for example, talk about the numbers of cruise passengers. We celebrate 1 million cruise passengers. We celebrate the fact that, for example, on a given cruise ship day, when we have 4 vessels in port, we have over 16,000 people in St. Kitts, sometimes more. But last year is only 12,000 persons. We're now bringing in an additional amount of persons. You look at the population of Nevis, for example. Nevis is about 12,000 persons, but you're bringing in 12,000 additional persons into to think it's in one day. Can our infrastructure take it? Can our health services, for example, take it? What if there was some kind of incident? So it gives us the opportunity now as we rethink and prepare for the bounce back. We are in the midst of the bounce back of tourism, to put things in place to make sure we do it right this time, because for some of us, we have not been doing it the right way, and we need this chance for us to think about it and recognize that tourism is not just about the visitors, it's about the locals as well. How do locals feel about what is happening in tourism? And this is where we have the think tank. It's not just the people at the Ministry of Tourism who has to contribute to this think tank. It's locals. The person on the street can have ideas because they observe things that we may not observe sitting in our offices, right? And they're also outside of the tourism circle. So it gives them a different eye. We are looking at it because we've done it all the time. And so we might be too close to it. And so it takes somebody looking from a distance to see things that we might miss. So this gives us that opportunity.
So how important do you think we as locals think we are to tourism? And what advice would you have to give to us in that?
I can answer that two ways. One, I'll start first with the survey we did last year. We did a residents' perception survey. How do residents feel about tourism? And one of the reasons why this was pushed is because we've always done visitor satisfaction surveys, giving more importance to the visitors' thoughts and feelings than the locals. We've decided, no, we want to hear from our locals, because in the end, especially if we're pursuing sustainable tourism, it's tourism that focuses the locals being at the center of tourism. And what we found when we did the survey is locals, especially young locals, do not feel that they're involved in the planning and development of tourism. We disaggregated the data based on age groups. Those who are 40 plus felt they were more involved, they had more of a say than those who are in the 20s. Right? And so that gives us something to look at now in terms of our rethinking of tourism. What can we do to get more people involved? We also looked at it by parishes. Some parishes felt they're more involved. And surprisingly for me, one of the parishes is an area where it's a tourism hotspot. People go there all the time, but people from that parish did not feel that they were involved in tourism.
Is this Black Rock?
Yes, you got it.
Which one was that?
Black Rocks.
Okay.
The area for Black Rocks, that parish. But it means, therefore, we have work to do to make them more aware of how they can be a part, or they already are a part. Because just by being a clean neighborhood, looking out for the visitors as they come, all of these things make you a part of tourism. And if you notice things that could be done differently, you can share it with someone at the Ministry of Tourism.
I want to pick your brain a little bit about the perspective of tourism and challenge my own perspective of what tourism is. Because when I think of tourism, listening to you earlier, I got the sense that you were pitching tourism to be an authentic experience as to who we are, that visitors should basically immerse themselves in. When I thought of tourism before, and I'm pretty sure that many locals think like me, tourism is something that's foreign to us because it deals with foreigners, so we're not that immersed in it. It's not our product, it's something that the government does, and we see these people, and you're handling that. We're just going about our daily lives.
Right. No, and I think one of the reasons you would get that from me, because my focus at work tends to be on sustainable tourism. In 2017, I was interviewed and I was asked what I would like to see, and I said I long for the day when in St. Kitts and Nevis, when we say tourism, people will understand that we're speaking of sustainable tourism. So we don't need to explain sustainable tourism when we tell them what we are doing. With sustainable tourism, you have the locals at the center. So when we're doing it first for the locals and then the visitors benefit. So if we put in new telecommunications, it's because there's a need locally and visitors will benefit. So it's not them versus us. It's a marriage between them and us. That is what sustainable tourism is about. And that is what the Ministry of Tourism has been pursuing. In 2013, 2014, we revised our tourism strategy. And we developed a strategy which we call unofficially a poor people, poor planet strategy. Because the focus has to be on the environment in which we exist, the planet, the place, and also people. Now, people comes from two sides because you look at the socio-cultural side of it, but you also look at the livelihood side of it. How do people benefit from tourism? Because we are giving up something as a destination. We're giving up things when we have thousands of visitors trips into our rainforest, which we cherish. We're giving up something. So what do we get back in turn? It's not always necessarily cash, but sometimes the cash that comes in helps government to put things in place to support us, right? So all of us are essentially a part of it, and we should do what we can for us to treat each other well, because then it makes it easier for us to treat foreigners well. And we also have to get away from this idea that visitors and tourists are only light-skinned people. I recently had an experience with some children, and I also shared with them. We had our annual green tourism camp, and I was telling the children about domestic tourism. COVID also made that more highlighted for us, because we didn't see it. If you went to spend the weekend in Sandy Point, and it doesn't have to be at a hotel, in Sandy Point, you're away from where you live and work for more than 24 hours, you are a tourist, because you would be spending in that destination. It's a smaller destination. People also have to understand as well, when we say destination in tourism, it doesn't mean a country or an island, because within a country you can have several destinations, plus the entire country also being a destination, right? So you go and spend the weekend by your grandmother. That's not where you normally live or work, and you're there for longer than 20. You're a domestic tourist. Right. So you don't have to be rich, you don't have to be light-skinned to be a tourist. You can be a tourist, and for us, it's even more interesting. You can go to Nevis, which is a totally different island. I mean, so you're a tourist, right? What would you want as a tourist when you go to Nevis? You would want them to treat you well. So it's the same thing. People who are coming and spending way more money than a boat ride to Nevis want to have that warm, welcoming experience.
What is the difference between the Ministry of Tourism and the Tourism Association? Am I saying it correct?
Authority.
The Tourism Authority, and what are their collaborations? So two questions.
Okay, so the Ministry of Tourism is the public agency responsible for tourism. The Tourism Authority is a quasi-government organization, actually a statutory corporation, responsible for marketing and product development for tourism. So their focus is on marketing the destination on behalf of the government. And there's some level of product development, and they're also responsible for cruise. The ministry now is responsible for policy, legislation, regulations. So that's where that is crafted. In our case, we also have some measure of product development at the ministry when you think in terms of the St. Kitts Music Festival. So the St. Kitts Music Festival, the secretariat falls within the ministry. And we also do some community tourism at the ministry level. But the real crux for the ministry is policy and regulations for tourism, being a facilitator for tourism, while the Tourism Authority works to market the destination, having developed or helped to develop the product. And the product includes the people.
So another way of looking at it is effectively to say the ministry seems to be the ones working behind the curtain.
Yes.
And the ones that we see on the stage would be the Tourism Authority.
Right, so the Tourism Authority is responsible for execution. Ministry comes up with the policies, the Tourism Authority would execute and implement those things.
All right, so I don't want to ask you how long you've been at the ministry, because I really don't want to age you. If you're willing to share that, sure, go ahead.
Let's just put it this way. I've been there, and I can share this story because it's quite interesting. Some people would be amazed. I started at tourism in the Department of Tourism as a work experience intern. So we hear about PEP and STEP. Well, I started in a similar program at tourism as a hospitality officer. When it became the Tourism Authority in 2003, I became a member of the Tourism Authority. I was a chief technical projects officer and then later marketing support manager. And then in 2007, I was transferred to the Ministry of Tourism to become the assistant secretary. Prior to that, Ministry of Tourism had not had an assistant secretary. We just had the permanent secretary. As a matter of fact, we would laugh. The ministry then only had the permanent secretary, the minister, a messenger driver, and the music festival. Tourism Authority did everything else. Yes.
So you've come a long way.
Yes. So I've been there quite a long time.
Okay. So can you tell us some of the roles that you perform?
As the assistant secretary, and mine is slightly different. My main job is to be the assistant to the permanent secretary. So I sort of deputize for the permanent secretary, but my area of focus is sustainable tourism. I am the Ministry of Tourism's Sustainable Tourism focal point. I'm also the chair of our advisory council, which is the St. Kitts Sustainable Destination Council. That was created in 2013. And that ties into what we're doing in terms of sustainable tourism, because what sustainable tourism really is sustainable destination management. So when you say it like that, people begin to realize it's not just about the people at tourism. Electricity has to be a part of it. Culture has to be a part of it. The private sector has to be a part of it. Civil society has to be a part of it. And that's what the Sustainable Destination Council is. It's an advisory body made up of public sector partners, private sector partners, and civil society groups, advising the ministry, doing small projects that create awareness of the need for us to be guardians of our destination. It's the only one we have, and we have to take care of it.
So now I have to ask you, because when I hear things like that, obviously I think, okay, you have this mission, there's this objective that you want to achieve. What are your metrics for success?
For us, I mean, we've just started. I guess you've had a little peep into our unit. And our unit is, the Sustainable Tourism Unit is basically 2 persons, aside from the council. And we are, at the present, working on our, one person said performance indicators, and I spoke to someone else and they said, oh, you're dealing with success indicators. I said to her immediately, that's the term I'm going to use. I'm not using performance. This is not a circus. We're looking at success.
You are correct.
Right? So we're looking at the impact. So we've done surveys. The resident perception survey that I mentioned, that's one of the things that we've done. We do training and we do evaluation at the end of the training. We have Plastic Free July. We do surveys based on Plastic Free July. We also have a campaign, which is the bigger campaign into which Plastic Free July falls, called Plastic Be Gone. So we have surveys. We're about to roll out a longer version of the survey that we used in July. And what we're going to be doing is doing a comparison of the results for this year compared to the previous years to see if there's been any change. So we use those, we use feedback from persons who would have interacted with us to measure the level of success and impact. And although many persons have not come back to us, for example, when we talk about the Plastic Free July and Plastic Be Gone, we are seeing changes. And we can attribute some of it to our consistent messaging about the need for us to reduce single-use plastics. I know there's a global push for the reduction, but I do believe we have had some influence in locals moving to use paper straws, for example. We've also done stuff like selling reusable bags. Well, we didn't sell those. We asked for a donation. And why I say that, the actual cost is not the price we charge, because we were using the opportunity to raise funds for the Heart of St. Kitts Foundation, which is a foundation we intend to raise funds to give back to community projects that meet our objectives. So that's what we're trying to do. We just wish more people would come aboard in terms of making contributions. We also have a sustainability charter, and we are encouraging businesses. And at first we were saying tourism businesses, but to be true to form, all businesses in St. Kitts are tourism-related businesses. So we're encouraging businesses to come on board and take up these best practices so that they can become more sustainable. Those are things we use to measure. We have not been very successful with the charter so far in terms of number of persons who have registered. We are trying to get people to understand, especially those who are closer in the circle for tourism. Visitors are demanding. We have seen a lot of research saying visitors are demanding more sustainable and responsible tourism. People want not just that you're protecting the environment, what about your corporate social responsibility? How are you giving back to the community in which you exist? For example, we complain about all these foreign hotels and stuff like that. Well, the visitors are now putting them on the map by saying to them, what have you done for the community in which you exist? So you make the money, it is exported because you're from external, but we want you to be giving back to the community in which you exist, doing things for the people in the country in which your business exists. So we're measuring these things. How do you give back? And we also, in terms of employment. So you look at those areas, and those are the things we use to guide the level of success. It's slow because you're changing behaviors. That takes a longer time. But we are reminded that you have to keep on doing it, be consistent, don't give up. And even if one person changes, we would have made a big difference.
Good stuff, good stuff.
I wish I could talk to you for longer because you're scratching the surface.
Yeah, you're just scratching the surface. You have to come back. You have to come back, even when it's not World Tourism Day. You just have to come back. So, Jimmy, do you have anything else to ask?
A whole lot, but we don't have the time for it. A whole lot. What I would like to do is to give you an opportunity again to pitch to the general public how important our roles are in tourism. So that's your camera, and you can.
For me, all of us are part of tourism, and St. Kitts relies on tourism. We don't have gold. We don't have all these other minerals, not yet. We're not aware that we have natural gas, but we have people. And tourism is a people-centric industry. It's about people, for people, right? And so I would want to encourage people, especially now as we rethink tourism, to rethink what your contribution is to tourism. We all look for the benefits, but what are you contributing towards you gaining benefits from tourism? Remember, good for us, better for all. Thank you.